Level Up Latina partners with working women and mamas alike to guide them in achieving fulfilling career and life goals through financial empowerment, professional or leadership coaching, and personal wellness. Find the unique coaching you need to succeed.
You're listening to Vero, Ceci, and Irene, and we are Level Up Latina.
Welcome back to another episode of the Level Up Latina podcast. This is episode 168, and today we are going to talk about overcoming a scarcity mentality. We want to focus on having good financial health, and especially as women that are first-gen Latinas, independent badasses, it's so important for us to think about our mentality around money. So we are going to discuss that today, scarcity specifically, and abundance and achieving abundance first in the mind. So before we get into it, how are we doing, Vero and Ceci?
We are good. I am no contractions yet, no baby yet, and I'm getting hot though. I am sweating a lot, but other than that, good and happy to be here otra vez con toda la raza. Yeah.
You have you have another episode to record, then you can start your labor. ¿Te crees?
Another one?
Oh, I forgot about that. The guest? Or what are you talking about, Ceci?
No, then you can start
We're done. We're done, aren't we, after this one?
No, por eso este. You have this episode.
Scared me.
No.
Me and Vero understood yet another one.
We only have this one.
We're like, we're going to be in the labor and delivery room. So this is it.
This is it.
This is the finish line.
This is it. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Bien, yo aquí, mi marido está barbecuing it up. He hasn't done that in a while. He loves that. He just loves being out there and barbecuing. He's doing ribs. He's doing salmon right now for lunch. And I'm like, oh, okay. I have one more episode. I'm like, and then I'll come and join you guys. He just brought the girls downstairs because the girls had been watching TV and stuff all morning pretty much. Y ya se les voy a estar afuera. So I'll go join them in a bit.
Well, I'm glad that we're all together. We'll get back to our barbecue. We'll get back to cooking the baby, Vero. But until then, this is going to be a good one. And we are going to cover, as I said earlier, just expanding on your mindsets and making sure that you're aware of when you have a scarcity mindset. So with that in mind, I wanted to ask my colegas here, what was their first thought when we thought about this topic? Like, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about scarcity around money?
I thought about my credit card and how I used to use credit cards in the past. We mentioned this in the podcast before when we first got our, first credit card in college. And I just remember being, just late on payments, and I just made bad decisions back then. And now I have one credit card that I use, and I never have cash. I don't even use my debit card anymore. At one point I was like, I'm just going to use my credit card and then just pay it monthly. So that's what I do. I always just use my credit card for anything and everything. I never have cash. And because I know that the money's coming in, ya no tengo esa preocupación de que, oh my God, I'm going to go into overdraft and I'm going to have overdraft fees. Like eso, knock on wood, hace años that it hasn't happened. So many years that it hasn't happened, probably pre-law school, probably. I don't know. So that's what I was thinking. I was just like, wow, good thing that we learned, and now we have the resources where it doesn't have to be that way. And I can just spend, again, I'm not going on, shopping sprees left and right. It's just like, this is how much I spend. And I want to say that every month I always say, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to spend as much this month. But every month my credit card bill is probably like $1,200-ish, más o menos. Esos son mis gastos. Yeah, I know. It's like
my jaw dropped.
No,
right
but
now.
it's not just. But it's not just my lunch.
But that's what she uses for everything. She pays everything with it. Yeah,
groceries. If I'm gonna go, so if I'm gonna go grocery shopping, if I'm gonna, whatever, my lunch, and now I'm in the office three days a week, so I usually buy lunch because I always forget to pack lunch. I'm trying to be better about that now. I pack my lunch to be healthier and just more conscious about what I pack for lunch. But I still, se me antoja. I've sent you guys pictures. I'm like, oh my God, look what I'm having for lunch this week. Pero that's my credit card, and luckily, again, we have the resources, and I'm never thinking like, oh my God, how am I going to pay for this credit card this month, So, gracias a Dios, we're okay in that department.
What came up for you, Vero, when you think scarcity?
Holding on to all kind of shit. No, I think the first thing that came to mind was like, damn, I remember like, when did I first hear about this? And I remember reading this book when I was working still at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And it was like the seven habits of the highly effective people. Yeah. So I remember reading about it then. And like, I mean, this is like years ago, right? So this is like my first job out of college, like my second job out of college. I'm training, they're training, developing us a lot. But I remember having a manager that was very, really about developing his team. So he's like, if you want to be a manager, if you're going to be, he said, you're going to be making good money here. I want you to understand. He was the same manager that gave me that, the smart women finish rich. And I was like, well, there's a white dude telling me how to be a woman and make money, like, and save my money. So it took me back to that book and not really fully understanding the concept of scarcity and then transitioning to like thinking like, oh my God, the people that I've met in my life that have gone through some really rough patches, that then they feel that they have to hold on to so much and hoard because they don't know when the next time they'll be able to have that much at the same time. So, and then it just goes to my thoughts immediately. Like all of this is your mindset, right? Like how you think about money and your relationship with money. So that was the first thing that came to mind when we decided on this topic.
That is fascinating. I always wonder like people's gut reaction or gut feeling to anything. So hopefully our listeners can do the same exercise with us. The first one that always comes to mind for me when I think of scarcity is my dad, because he was cheap. My dad was like the cheapest man. He was like a hoarder of money, but he always had a lot of money and he just wanted it for what he wanted it for, so it maybe wasn't for himself. Oftentimes that he would have like the most rundown clothes and the most rundown shoes, and he wouldn't even want to like spend money on really anything basic. But he would then go back to Mexico with his family that was there, and he was like baller, big baller, and just like a man at a strip club, just shooting money out of a shooting money gun. So it's interesting because
Otto.
aka Otto. So I don't think that he was cheap. I just think that he was very selective about what he was cheap with. But growing up, how I equated scarcity was like, man, he always acts like he has to hoard money. Again, just the way he dressed like if he didn't have like closets and closets of great clothes. I found it very weird and strange, but that's how my dad's example was. And then as I was growing up, I'm a lot like Ceci in the sense that I never felt scarcity with money growing up in my immediate upbringing. But then when I started to have my own issues with money around like my credit card and like you said, like overdraft fees and like bad money moves in my 20s, then was when I first sort of realized like, oh my gosh, like there's not enough, like be careful, like don't get into debt. Or then I did get into debt and then I was like super scared of like, how am I going to pay this debt? But thank goodness that's no longer the habits in my household. But I can see that there was a lot rooted in how I was based on having like competing ideas, like my mom being very generous and good with money and my dad being more of a hoarder with money and not necessarily generous, but picking and choosing who deserved his time and money, which is a whole nother layer of thoughts and feelings. But so I grew up with like these competing ideas, right? Like about money and whether it was good or bad or evil or rich people are evil. And there was just so much around money that comes around just me being Latina. And I don't know if y'all can relate to that, but it's so important to really think about our ideas about money, because in order to have more of it, we have to be aware of scarcity. We have to be aware of fear, because I've always believed, and I believe this also through books, how Vero said that, the more you think positively about money, the more it just flows into your life. Like you are open to receive. That sounds very airy-fairy, but even from an intellectual standpoint, there are plenty of books out there that really have this concept down. And so one of the first books that I actually read around money was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and how the person was growing up with a parent who is his actual biological parent who didn't understand money, and then a parent of a friend who understood money. And for us Latinos, I think we can relate to this book so much. This gentleman was Asian who wrote it, Robert Kawasaki. We can totally relate to that, I feel, because we often have our families that did the best they could from humble beginnings. And then we often come into contact with, like Vero said, like that person who was really smart and well-read and had all these ideas about growth. And you start to have these ideas around like, oh, they see money different. They see business different. They see life different. And I think that's the first time we may realize as young adults that we have scarcity mentalities, and scarcity being defined as there's not enough money. When am I going to get the next paycheck? Or I can't make more, or just these whole ideas that there's not enough out there, there's not abundance. And oftentimes you find with wealthy people, they don't think like that at all. So with that being said, when's the first time y'all came across someone who didn't have a scarcity mentality? Or if you have another point before that, we can go there too.
I wanted to say, like, it's funny, like when you're saying all these things and like you mentioned your family. I mean, I think the first things we learn about money comes from our family. And I feel that my parents did such an amazing job at we were poor, and I didn't know we were poor. And I've shared this before until I pretty much went to Santa Barbara and realized, damn, I am poor. Like even amongst our friends, like we had friends that are like, "¿Qué? You have this and you have that." And it wasn't like a surprise to me. I didn't feel like I didn't feel a sense of jealousy, and I didn't feel like, what? It was just like oh snap, realization. Like, what did my parents do to help me feel safe, secure, and that no nos iba a faltar nada? And whatever that was, I was so thankful for it, because I think that really helped me understand, like, when I started bringing money into my life, like, once I think that first job out of college, that's when you truly, I think, become that adult. Like, at college, you're still a kid. You have financial aid. Sometimes your parents might send you some money. Sometimes they don't. But we all know the cup of noodle, the cup of noodle budget, right? Like, we all have that one. So
we're all in scarcity mode in college.
Yeah, we're all in
Yes.
scarcity. We're like, hey, me das de tus frijoles y yo te doy de mis tortillas.
Sí.
Me das tu queso. Like, girl, we are bartering. So I felt like when I truly became like an adult is when I was put out into the real world and handling my bills, my responsibilities. And now I was generating this income, right, for myself. And I'm very glad that my parents never made money an issue. And because I was like, well, we're going to make it. No matter what, we're going to make it. Because if I didn't have it before, I'm going to be okay. Because I can always go back to this cup of noodle. You know what I mean? Like, it was never like this feeling of lacking or not there being enough. So I think when it did I feel that the lacking part came in understanding how to use my money, understanding how to use my credit cards, because my parents were anti-credit cards. They were like, nope, don't use a card. Even I think back then, like when debit cards first started coming out, it was like, oh, puedes usar tu debit to pay for everything. And my dad's like, don't use your card. Because then money just...
My mom still doesn't understand that a debit and a credit card are different. It's like fascinating.
So it's like, I feel that for me, it started at home, and I'm very thankful and grateful that my parents were not, there wasn't a stress or this thing of like, no vamos a poder, because you know what? We've been at the bottom before. So no matter what, we're going to be okay. So I think that for me, it really made a very big, it resonated with me significantly when it came to money, where I felt like I wasn't missing out much if I was eating frijoles. You know what I mean? But it really starts there. I think that's the core thing is it starts at home. And many times, like, our parents are learning as well as we are when they're becoming parents, right? They're like, they don't know. So when they're stressed out about money, we're going to get that. So at the end of the day, from that, I think that even with when I lost jobs or I left the job and I didn't have one lined up, and I've been there a couple of times, thankfully I wasn't like, what am I going to do? I don't have enough money for this. It was always more like, okay, this is what I do have. And how can I ration this out so I can, have enough for the next couple of months in order for me to have time to find another job or have time to do the things that I need to do while I am in this period of time. And I think that state of mind of like changing it from focus on what you do have, not what you don't have enough of, is what really helps in the scarcity. Is it scarcity or scarcity?
Scarcity.
Thank you. I speak English funny. Yeah. So yeah.
English is your second language.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I wanted to say that you guys touched on a couple things that reminded me of stuff. Irene, with your dad saying how he was cheap. I feel like my dad to this day, he's always trying to get like the best deal. Like he goes from grocery to like get the best deal. And then my mom and I were like, ¿Que no gastas más dinero? Like, with the gas, like going back and forth, because he does that. And maybe that's just his way of like getting out and like just going, but he still does that. He still tries to get the best deal of like, ¿dónde están más, más baratos los jitomates, for example? Oh, están más baratos acá que en la Cárdenas. But my dad still to this day does that. But again, what you were saying, Vero, that, you didn't realize it until you got to college. I feel like I never noticed or never felt that my parents were, just making it work. I don't know how they did it, but they made it work. My dad, had gone through this accident. He never worked again. And my mom was working, and at times she was working 2 jobs, but I never felt like we were, starving or not eating well. Like we were always fed. Siempre, we got clothes on, new clothes for the first day of school. And it wasn't until we got to college and I, because of my parents, lack of money, I was able to get full scholarships and full grants for all through college. I graduated college not owing a penny because I was able to get like a full full ride with grants and scholarships and whatever, whatever the UC system offered at that time. So that was kind of a realization, and knowing that, other parents were giving their kids money while in college, and my parents never did, or paying like their cell phones, and my parents never did, because at that point I felt like I was already out of the house, and I, yo lo hacía como podía. I would use my grant money for rent, to buy clothes, to go on our random trips or whatever, we did back in those college years. And, that's when I noticed it. But going back to your question, Irene, as to when we first, or who taught us to, kind of play better with money. And I think it was until I got to my old job at the law firm, where I started working there after college, and I learned a lot. I was one of the few Latinas at that law firm, but I learned a lot. I learned about 401ks and how it was important to start contributing to those like early on, right, for our later years. And I remember learning and knowing of other women, including my mom, that had 401ks, but then they would take out the money because they they needed it. But I knew through that job, or I learned through that job, that this was going to be important for me for future, for retirement, to contribute like the max. And that's what I always did. All the years that I was at the law firm, I contributed the max, and my employer matched dollar for dollar. And I knew that I would never touch that money. To this day, I've never touched that money. That money's still there. It's, gone down with the crash of 2008, but then it came back up. So ahí está ese dinero sin tocar, and hopefully keeps on growing for when, it is time for us to retire. Ahí está ese dinero que incrementó, and we can use it to, for a comfortable retirement. Like, who doesn't want that? Especially us that have worked so hard to get to these roles that we're doing, to build our business. Like, we deserve it.
Agreed. So those are really good tips. Vettel talked about appreciating what you have. Vettel talked about not feeling that there was lack growing up, which is so cool, because I think it's hard to develop a scarcity mentality if you're not aware of the lack. And Ceci's family did the same. And then Ceci talked about long-term savings. I think sometimes when we have a scarcity mentality too, we're afraid to put money away because we don't think we're going to have more, right? So we're bad savers. And retirement plans are something that you could be averse to because you want it all right now. And that's like, long-term savings is a wonderful way to, what is this topic? Overcome a scarcity mentality. Like, put your money away. Ceci even talked about like the crashes that happened in 2008. It's going to happen now with the recession upon us. Like, those things are going to happen, but you set it and you forget it and you continue to invest, and it's a long-term game. And just that mentality, I think, overcomes scarcity, because the fear that the money will not be there, and hurry up and ripcord and take it. Or like in your mom's case, like, they had need, la necesidad. It's like, they're not going to leave it there. They're going to take it out. And I could see that too in that side of it. I wanted to talk about like, and I don't know if I answered it the first time I came across maybe non-scarcity mentality.
You did.
I think in the community that I'm in, I think that's been really, really great. Like, living in Redondo Beach, and the people who live in Redondo Beach, they just see money differently and think differently about money, and have so much money apparently, because people could just be using their credit card. But the point is that money is kind of played with differently around here. And there's a lot of people that are business owners. There's a lot of people that have made good investments, and so they're able to live up with their investments. And that just kind of changed my world, where I started to see like money can be used to change your life, passive income from your business. And it's not just a job, because I think a job can keep us in a scarce place because you make such a limited amount and it's all you make. And if you don't grow in that job, like, you can stay in that cycle of scarcity. But my community has really expanded my vision for what's possible and what I can have and how I can make more. And I think that that's a really important piece. Like, believing that you can make more is a great way to achieve a non-scarcity mentality and more of an abundant mentality, because you don't get stuck, you don't plateau. Like, if you believe that you can always earn more money and elevate and grow in your career and your business, like, it's just going to happen. I've seen it happen so many times in my life, that when I've let go of scarcity mentality, where I didn't want to invest, or I didn't want to spend, or I was playing it safe, nothing came of it. But then the minute I chose the reverse, and when I have invested, when I've spent, when I've gone on the vacation, money always comes back. It has always come back. And I've said this before on the show, like, there's always ways where it's like 2 bonuses and a raise this year, because I wasn't scared of doing something good with my money, like investing it or spending it on things that I'm passionate about. And happens all the time, but you have to be like open. I think it's like, I always envision like a closed fist when I think of scarcity, and then I envision the open hand when I think of abundance. And you and your body and your mindset, you know when you're coming from like a closed fist or an upbringing that is like that. This community that I'm raising my kids in, that's not what we experience. But in impoverished communities, there is a lot of the closed fist and trying to get things cheaper, or worried that someone's trying to get one over on you, or worried that someone's stealing. There's like a paranoia sometimes, in at least how I was raised in the community, and that I think keeps you also from overcoming scarcity. But what I was gonna say is, in terms of abundance, like what made y'all open up and become more abundant? You're both laughing.
I was thinking of a story recently that my sister told me.
I was thinking of something too that you reminded me. So I'm like,
go for it.
Because you Irene were saying about how like you have to have this mindset, and you go in and things just happen. And I was just thinking, oh my God, yeah, with my job. I feel like, I don't know how much of this I've shared, but I felt like I went into this nonprofit legal aid, taking about a $30,000 pay cut, right, from private practice to now. And I was like, well, it goes with the trade. It goes with working with a nonprofit legal aid. And then come July of last year, I guess every July or so, there's like, we're part of a union, so there's a bargaining unit, and there's raises, right, for salary raises. And then last year subió un poquito, so I'm like, okay, cool, that it worked, que bueno. And then this year in April, I was promoted to the coordinating attorney for my team, so that came with like another 10,000, right, increase. I'm like, okay, cool. And then again for this July, so we're in July now, we're recording in July, so recent negotiations also came about, and like another, I want to say 14 raise that I got. And so now I'm only like $2,000 away from my prior salary. And I'm like, oh my God, like how cool and crazy that all this happened. I thought that, I was going to be stuck, I guess, with this salary for a while. And I was like, well, it comes with working for nonprofit legal aid, but the board and my awesome, you guys met our executive director, who's been working and vouching for us and just negotiating and looking at other nonprofit legal aids to put us like at up here and raising those salaries. Everybody's so happy at the organization, and I am too. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm only like a couple $1,000 or, $1,000 or $2,000, away from what I was making at private practice. Like, how awesome. Y me siento super happy and excited, muy excited, como diría Selena. But yeah, I mean, that's another point that you made me remember. It's like, I came in like, okay, well, it's going to stay like this. This is what I'm going to make, and it's going to be okay. But now, the money is just flowing. Our business is also doing great. También este año, gracias a Dios, también aquí, allí también entra that side income that's also so good. Y así we're going to continue growing, gracias a Dios. So,
and you know what I love about your point is that your boss doesn't have a scarcity mentality. That is so critical, because in the nonprofit sector, I've seen it. If you have a leader that isn't thinking about having a lot in abundance and paying people a lot, you're going to be stuck in that. No tenemos, there's not enough resources. We have to be this size. Like, you have to have this vision to be like, no, we grow. The more we grow, the more we make, the more we pay people, the more staff we can have. Like, when you have a growth mindset and you're not scarcity in the nonprofit world, you see people elevating just like that, Ceci. Like, you give raises just like that, because in a nonprofit sector, you also want to compete with not losing good people. We are one of the best sectors at knowing that we either burn people and lose them, or we take care of people and keep them. And we know money talks, and there's a recession going on, and there's such inflation. So I'm so glad that your boss has that mindset. Y que sabe, let's take care of our people, let's advocate. You said like straight up she's advocating and doing the work, which is really cool. But also it all worked out. Like, the way I just did the math, you're well over what you used to make, because if you add your level of Latina profit, like, I know it's more than that $2,000.
That's right. Hey, snap.
Opening up and going in a place of, it's all good, it all works itself out. I don't have to worry about this pay cut, because it's all going to work itself out. God, the universe, somebody always gives you that tenfold. I've seen it so many times. So here you are, Ceci, leaps and bounds.
You have to be willing to put yourself in those situations. I think that we are afraid of that. Like, well, what am I going to do now? And I mentioned something like earlier, like that noodle budget, the cup noodle budget. Like, we all know that the ground, like what our lowest amount we need to make it, like to be able to do things and live our life okay. we know that number, the bottom number. And I remember making that transition from when I wanted to leave the car industry and I jumped into the sports federation. I knew that I'm willing to take this risk of taking a significant pay cut and working for a very small organization, but knowing what I brought to the table. I'm like, okay, so let me understand. And I think that's where it's really important, because if I knew that I was not going to be able to make up my time, like the money that I was going to be cutting from my budget or from my income, I knew I was like, okay, if I can't rationalize it in my mind of how long it will take me to get to where I'm at today with this new organization, am I willing to take this risk, right? So we always have to be very, not like calculated risk, but like really understand where we're putting ourselves in, because it can be stressful to take that pay cut. However, you have to be willing to still be like, understand and put in the work to be like, I understand what this organization's doing and I want to be part of it, and I'm willing to put in the work to make that money or close that gap. So for me, I was going from the car industry into this sports federation with a friend, and you know, it was a family, friends of a family, you know, all that stuff. I'm like, no, it's a family-owned business, so a small business. And they're like, hey, we just need someone to help us grow. And I'm like, okay, what is your vision? And if I match with it, can I really see myself doing this and helping you guys bring an influx of new clients, growing this business? And if I don't believe in it, I cannot do that for them, and I cannot do that for myself. But it was a risk. I was like, you know what? Everything you're asking for, I can do. And within a year, igual, I was like, okay, you know, for some reason they had not been able to grow their events. They had not been able to get the staff. They had not been able to do all these other things. And I feel that with what I contributed and me being so open to it, it really helped. It wasn't that just me focusing on me. It was me like, we're going to grow for the better here in general. And we definitely grew that organization to where my pay came back up significantly to match what I had been making previously in management roles, in, you know, running a business, like a corporate business, you know, to a smaller business, growing them to over $1 million kind of budget, like business. And it really meant thinking out of the box and being willing to take that risk. Everyone was like, "Estás loca? How are you going to pay for your house?" Because at this point, remember, I had my house, I had my car, I had my things. Like, what in the world am I going to do? But I knew, like, if I make minimum this, which at that point was like, if I can make at least $49,500, I will be okay. I can pay off my mortgage, I can pay off my car, I can pay this. All my responsibilities I knew. So thankfully they were like, we'll meet you at like 55, but it was still a risk, right? But by the time I left there within the 5 years, I was well above where I had been before. And of that $49,500 that, you know, that my mind was like, this is my bottom point. This is my noodle budget. So I think it's like, you also have to understand like what you're willing to risk and what you're willing to do, and be like, if you're open to it, yes, it will come back. It will come back to you, because you cannot be afraid of those situations. You have to be able to take them and be like, let's fucking grow with this opportunity and see the growth in it. Because if not, you know, like you said, you don't have the leadership if you don't have the people there. Because I feel the leadership was already giving up. They're like, dude, we've been in business for like 5 years. We're still doing this. And it's like, okay, let's bring in a new perspective and do things slightly different and be open to that. That's going to also help you as a leader grow your business and allow for a new direction to take over. And it makes you like, it just helps everyone around. So I think that that's one of the best things I did. You were talking about the recession, and it made me think of something. Right now, you know how times are really tough and everyone's like, inflation's ridiculous, pay's not great, all this other stuff. But I know for me that the reason I was able to take advantage and buy my house in 2008 when everyone else was losing their houses was because the only person I knew in my family that had made it in a sense with money, or was my money expert, was my brother. Remember I told you guys my brother was the one's like, save your money, don't spend it on dumb shit. Like, you don't need a car, you need a house. You can't live in your car, you know, like things like that. So thanks to him, he was like, save your money, save your money. So I was saving my money. And when the recession hit, thankfully I had money saved, that I was able to take advantage of that situation. When other people were losing their homes, I was able to come in and be like, I could create my home now. So that's what one key thing that I think is important. It's like, everyone feels that right now the times are really hard, and they are challenging times, you know, but things are not going to get better in the next 5 years. So if you're in a position to set yourself up to win now, go for it. Don't overthink it. Because in 5 years, like let's say you're going to want to buy a house. In 5 years, houses are not going to be less expensive. I don't think there's going to be a house crash. Supply and demand, baby. Like there's no way. But think in the sense of like, if this is what I really want, how do I position myself for the next, in the next year or soon to go into and make this offer on a home that I want to build? And it doesn't have to be the perfect home, but just getting one and slowly working on it and building it and, rebuilding and remodeling. I say go for it, because it might be hard for, ¿cómo se dice? Taking advantage of someone's, ¿cómo se dice? Like when someone else is going through a hard time.
One man's trash is another man's treasure. And the point is that right now you can get stuff deeply discounted. If you're ready for the recession, you can actually make great moves right now if you're being strategic. Like your whole point in the beginning was like you made strategic risks with your job. Maybe Ceci didn't realize she was making a strategic one too, but now they both paid back, in dividends, and you made more. Same thing with this recession. Like if you've been the kind of person that's been responsible going into it and good with money and not just blowing money off because you don't think it's coming, because that's another way of scarcity mentality. Like you don't save and you blow it all off and you live paycheck to paycheck and you stay stuck in that cycle. But if you have a good nest egg right now, like the recession is good. What Vero is saying is things are going to be deeply discounted. There's going to be opportunity. All the people that were living large throughout the pandemic that monopolized on the pandemic, like they're now looking for exit strategies. So for instance, all these like Bitcoin people that lost all their money, like they're about to start selling their luxury things at a discount. Might be a house, might be a car. You might be able to come up on that. So take risks big, be strategic with your risk. I think what I'm hearing from all of the women sharing today is be smart about it though. Budget. I love that Vito brought up budgeting. I think one way to help overcoming scarcity is just know your money. Not knowing your money is going to keep you stuck in a cycle of being afraid of money, of being afraid of not having enough or that more is not coming. Know your bottom line numbers. Like how much do you bring in? How much do you spend? If Vito knew my credit card number that I pay off monthly, she'd be really scared. She was scared with yours, Ceci. The secret that I just said though, that you pay off monthly, you don't pay interest. It's very important to know your bottom line expenses, your savings goals, your fun goals. Like when you can plan to spend money, then you get away from fear. Like fear of, I have so many friends that I know that like don't spend because they were kind of bred in that. They grew up like not going on vacation because their parents couldn't. They couldn't. Like you can afford it. They grew up in scarcity because it's situational, circumstances. You don't have that situation now, but there's so many people right now that don't enjoy life because they may not have the words for how they were brought up, makes them feel a certain sort of way around money. And that's what we need to be careful of. If you budget, those fears can go away because again, you know how much you need to live. So you spend, you know how much you need to save, and you do that. Not spending as in like your cost of living expenses, but your discretionary expenses, like your fun expenses. So many people don't do the fun part because they haven't planned to have fun. They haven't planned to, spend on that. And you don't feel bad about that. Like you really can overcome scarcity by knowing like, I'm supposed to spend this money on fun. Like I'm not being selfish. I'm not being frivolous. Like this is my fun budget for the month. And if I want to dick that off on buying like, I don't know, the latest celebrity fucking shapewear, then I will buy the latest celebrity shapewear from Instagram or whatever. I don't even know what people run out to buy.
If I buy myself a butt lifter, I will get a butt lifter.
Perfect. Good frivolous one. If I want to get the expensive facial.
My outfit for the beach.
Your outfit for the beach. Cómpralo.
Think that there's I'm sorry, I was going to ask a quick question.
I was going to say something.
There's the opposite of that. Like, oh, you know what? And now you make more and then you just, the money's to be used. I make so much money. The money's
no, you have to save more when you make more, though. You have to save more when you make more. You have to invest more when you make more. It's not more to spend on the fun shit. Like you can have more expensive fun, but you better be saving.
Also, my sister, I'm like, that's how. Like, my sister's a nanny, and she works with very wealthy families. But she's like surprised at how they do things, right? And she's like, oh my God, I can't believe that they're like eating expired stuff, or like or they really limit how they spend on this. Like they'll go buy groceries, but they're like, oh, give it to the little ones. The little ones don't know that that's not supposed to taste stale. Like, she's like, who does that? But the way they spend their money, she's like, that's one weird story. I was like, that sucks. You should not be giving your kids just because they don't know any better, like an expired shit or stale shit, right? But she's like, yeah, that she's like, she won't, she gets everything for free. La señora, she'll like go and get everything for free on like Facebook Marketplace or like wherever, like next door, things like that. But the things that she has that she wants to get rid of, las vende.
Oh my God.
She doesn't give them away for free.
Las vende?
las vende. And she, she puts them on there, puts a price on it, and that's what it is. She's like, she doesn't budge. But she's like, these two people, like this couple, like they're well off. One of them's like works for the government as like a lawyer and clearance and all this stuff, and she's like a producer. So they make cash, and they come from family that has money. So I was telling Gabby, I'm like, that's the thing. Like these people like that, like they understand that certain things are okay. Like you can get things here for at this amount that you value it at, but whatever you're going to give away has more value than what they, than that people will think it has. I'm like, but that's how they keep their money. They're not going to just give shit away, or spend frivolously on something. They know it has to be very calculated, very understood, and their value of it needs to really match there. Because if not, no, I'm like, that's how they keep their money. But she's like, I am so surprised at how they spend money and how they don't. And I'm like, well, that's how most people should be. We should be a lot more cautious with how we spend it, but also know how and why we're doing it. Like, Irene, you brought it up. Like, if you know that this is for your fun, go spend that damn money on that. Don't go be like, oh, I fucked up and I should have used this for the house groceries or for my car. No, fucking use it for what it's meant to be used. And these people keep their money for that reason, because they know that this is what they're using it for. And they're super cheap on everything, So
I kind of like that. Lo que me quedó de herencia de mi papá, que I do sometimes feel like I can be cheap on certain things, like, but I enjoy that puzzle. Like I enjoy that puzzle of like having a good vacation versus the value versus I read reviews. Like I'm obsessed with anal with it, right? Like, where can I get a deal? Like this Airbnb is better than this Airbnb. I'm gonna get more for this Airbnb. And like my friends will come to me and be like, oh, apples for apples. What do you think about these Airbnbs? And I'm like, well, there's a formula. What are the reviews on both? What is the distance? Do you need to pay for Ubers to get to your distance? Because that's more expensive. It's like this whole puzzle. But I think I get that from my dad. Okay, he was like Vero, like he was cheap to a point, but then he was lavish to a point. What did he find value? And then there's things like that I am so lavish when it comes to like eating expensive food. Me vale. I'm lavish when it comes to gas. Like who's gonna fight it? Like gas is gonna be what it costs. Who's gonna get a better deal? It's gonna cost what it's gonna cost. It's like I'm not gonna drive for 2 cents cheaper over here or even $1 cheaper. Time is money. So there's some things in my life que yo no me hago la vida imposible. It's like if gas is gonna be $20 a gallon, I'm still gonna use it. I'm still gonna pump the gas. So the price tag doesn't even matter to me. But there are other things where I'm like, oh, I can get a way better deal. I'm not buying that there. So he's like, that part.
Yeah, for sure. Yo también con la comida, when I go grocery shopping, like, no me estoy fijando, like, okay, how much does this cost? How much does this brand? Like, I just, like, what I like, I grab, y nunca me fijo en los precios. My parents still do that. When was it? On Thursday, we took them out. My sister and I took my parents out, well, for my dad's belated Father's Day lunch, and then my sister and I split, and then we both left it. I saw my mom eyeing el receipt, like it's like ¿por qué? Like who cares, like de cuánto de propina, algo así. But no, yeah, so ya no me fijo en lo que cuesta. Lo que sí me fijo, it's like ya nunca me voy a comprar lentes de designer que cuestan 400. No, ya no, like ¿pa qué? Like no los cuido bien. I have kids, like no, something cheapy that's cute, whatever stylish, eso me compro, pero ya no to splurge. Pero en la comida también soy igual que tú, like whatever, and with vacation too, it's just like we need it, we deserve it, and why not? We're gonna stay at all inclusive in Cabo, yes, para no salir, estar allí y nomás salir a los antojos, right, de la comida, just leave the all exclusive to go eat out with anything that I'm craving, fish in this case.
That is so trippy. What's funny too, like even when we were kids, we would go to the rancho and that's all we went to. Like it didn't feel like this is our only option. It's so trippy,
I mean, we look forward to it.
Here we go again. It was like I was really excited.
Las vacaciones.
Las vacaciones. Vamos al rancho. And then I just trip out. Like, you know what? Now like we are so blessed, and I think it really, even like having the right people around you, right? Like I feel that Irene, your experiences like in your community, Ceci, like being able to like refer to friends, being like, hey, no, don't worry, like things are gonna be all right. Like you're where you're starting in this new organization, like this is what having an understanding of how those worlds work, or having your sibling understand things that thankfully they're a little bit older than you and they've lived life, and they're like, hey, don't trip out. Like it's gonna be this is how it works out. Take care of your shit and take care of you and plan out your money. Like Irene said, like you need to understand it, how it's coming in. And I think a lot of the times we don't, like there's still times I think like Vero from like first job in college where I'm like, okay, I'm getting paid this much an hour, this piece of clothing cost me this much, this is this much of my work, is it worth it? sometimes I even go back to that. But sometimes, like you need to do that. You need to remind yourself, like, yes, it's worth it because I have put in the work and I have it. And guess what? I am going to be okay because it's going to come back to me again. But if we don't learn from that shit, oh no.
No, se repite, tus hijos lo repiten. Like, we teach our kids, like, it's not that things are expensive, because our parents like, oh, está muy caro, right? It was expensive to them. Things were expensive to them. Like, Ceci's mom's looking at the receipt. It's like, what has value? It's not expensive if it's valuable. It really isn't. If you can truly afford it and it's worth having, it isn't expensive. So we've had that debate with the Guilt-Free Squad members, and we've been talking about paying for hired help and paying for maids, and our parents being critical of that, and our mom's not, totally accepting that and thinking, like, in a way, my mom's like, ¿Quién te crees? Like, I've cleaned houses my whole life. I can't believe you have a maid. And it's like, to me, my time is valuable. My marriage is valuable. I don't want to fight about a dirty house. That's not me now, but back in the day when we had a maid, it was because Diego and I were like, we can solve this problem with money. Not in a egoic, no somos humildes, somos creídos, but yeah, if we're going to fight about dishes and it's going to drain us, we're going to be annoyed once a week, let's just have someone do our dishes once a week because we don't want to fight about dishes. Again, that has changed because now our kids are learning how we had to learn, which is they are a big part of the home. Just because we still have money and we can still spend on a maid, we don't have one right now because there's 5 people in this household that can contribute equally. So when we clean this house, there's 5 different people, 10 different hands. So my kids are learning, like, we don't have a maid. They don't remember the times when mom and dad needed a maid because we were driving them crazy when they were little, and it was driving our marriage crazy. So that was valuable, right? Right now, we don't see the value of a maid. At either points in our life, it wasn't expensive, but my mom would say things like, oh no, esto muy caro. ¿Cómo lo vas a pagar tanto? And I'm thinking, Mom, you were a housekeeper like 30 fucking years ago. Like, of course they pay you significantly less. I'm going to pay this woman what I'm going to pay her. Like, she's on the bus. Like, I got to think about her life. I got to give her a bonus. She's like, oh, hell no. And I told her that I give the gardener a bonus. And she's like, why? Like, but our parents are thinking scarcity, and they're thinking, like, their life. My mom, of course, back in the day, what they paid the gardener, what they paid the maid, like, she no capta at all, like, the change in, like, no, Mom, you have to pay them what they have to make now in today's dollars just because you're loaded with all your retirement funds everywhere.
And she goes, like, you can do it yourself. Why are you going to pay somebody?
Mi madre.
The thing is, I don't want to do it myself.
No, mi mamá lavaba los pinches pisos on her knees. I mean, she can barely walk now because she's, like, cleaning a whole house on her knees.
My mom would make us scrub the little in-between things, ¿cómo se llama
the grout?
The grout. Thank you. I'm like, I can't think right now. But the grout, we would, like, once every 2 months, we were on our knees with a little bowl and a little toothbrush and fucking scrubbing that little grout para que quedara blanco. And I'm like, never again. And since then, I was like, I hate having, like, pisos así de que no sea wood floor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
That
I'm like,
freaking grout.
Because it takes me to the grout stories of, like, being on my knees and washing that shit.
But ahora Doña Brenda y Doña Mari can clean the grout. Ladies, you guys are ballers.
I'm like, here, let me quiero que limpies el grout ahora, por favor.
Aquí tienes tu toothbrush. Toda la tarde.
I want Doña Mari to start following that girl that we follow para que se enseñe tricks.
Yes.
I don't know if she has Instagram, but I'll
show her. I love her. Amaura Vanessa, what's her name?
Amaro.
Vanessa Amaro,
my lady came in with this, like, electrical mop the other day. I know it is a tangent, but I was like, ¿Dónde te conseguiste eso?
Value.
¿No vas a creer?
Value.
¿No vas a creer? She's like, I was at a Goodwill and I saw it, and she was curious about what it was, and the dude's like, oh, it's an electrical mop. She's like, guess what? I'm buying it. She's like, it was $15.
Good for her.
But the time it saves her mopping my whole house. There's a lot of square footage here, you know. Like,
good for her. Good for you.
Like, I was like, thank God, because I got tired of asking her to mop twice, because that'll be easier. You know, la primera pasada. You know how your moms are too, right?
Oh, I know.
Like, 3 pasadas. Una la empieza, la 2 bien pesada, y la última nomás para asegurarte que todo quede bien. And
yeah.
I'm like, can you give one more pasada, please? And now I don't feel guilty about asking her, because it's an electrical mop, so I'm good. I didn't know things existed.
I've never heard of one.
I wanted to buy one of those little, like, everyone tells me about the ones that roam around the room by themselves. ¿Cómo se llaman?
Oh, the robots.
Yeah, does that really work? That seems weird, but I have so much dog hair. They work?
Yeah.
I'm going to get one. Everyone tells me. Y con los perros en la casa, like, I just need it. I needed to kind of get into the crevices.
I think it's good.
We sweep like 3 times a day because of the dogs. But that's, again, value. We thought the lab was worth it. Me habla chinga todos los días con mis dos
You're
perros.
gonna find that Roomba worth it.
Yeah, that Roomba's really worth it because I wanted to own 2 freaking bougie dogs that are very expensive. I just spayed one this weekend. That's a whole other thing. But value. I have to remind myself. But anyway, we're going to wrap this episode unless my partners have anything else to share, any dying thoughts as we wrap up scarcity mentality. Some of the hot notes that I took down is just budgeting, making sure to be strategic with the risks you take because the world will give you back what you're open to receive. So be open. Believing on that note is you have to believe that you can change kind of the mindset that you may have had in the past or may have been brought up with believing that money is an evil thing or a limited thing or not for you. There's a lot of money in this world, and if you have a hard time remembering that, look at all the wealth in this world. Spend time at a place like Montecito, California, Malibu, drive through Beverly Hills and see all the money there. All the money there. Why can't it be in your pocket? Why can't it be yours? Like there are business owners that are in these very wealthy communities, and there are people that own these big, beautiful homes, and you say whatever you want. Some people say like sometimes people may be living paycheck to paycheck to have those things, but how did they get there? Like how did they even manage to be able to front? So there's so much money in the world. So believe that you are worthy and deserving. That's a good way to overcome scarcity mentality is believe that it can be yours. Believe that it can be yours. And what happens with belief is that you start to stretch and grow and do more when you believe. We're not just saying like airy fairy, vas a creerlo, and it's just going to fall from the sky. No, it's just a matter of your mindset being just more evolved and understanding that you may have these ideas around money that are actually limiting you and keeping you kind of locked in this box of scarcity. So the last note is be bold. So budget, believe, and be bold. Be bold with your life. You only have one life to live. So if you have felt really scarce for the last 20 years, 30 years, 40, 50 years, you're listening to this and you're like, I've always been afraid of money. I've always struggled with money. Like, ya basta. That's enough. Like it starts today. And we're talking about baby steps like budgeting. We're talking about reading books. Vero mentioned a really good book. I mentioned a really good book like Rewind This One. But any books that can get you to think differently, any podcast like this one, there's so much free content to get you to change your mind around money and not being scared about it. So find those podcasts, find those companies, find those Instagram pages to be inspired and just be bold with your money moves and your decisions. And on top of that, échenle ganas. Keep going.
Boundaries. También tell your family.
Another good B.
Hard because of you.
Good. What did you say, Vero? Expand. That's another B. Boundaries.
And boundaries. When you're the one making money, like it's like everyone's like, hey, me prestas o me das? Or they're like, hey, let's all have a family party. And then no one pitches in and you end up paying for everything. Like it's one thing to be wanting to give. Like, hey, I make enough. I make a lot. I want to contribute. But I want to contribute my fair share because I make more than everybody else here. But making sure that everyone else is also held accountable to it. So setting your boundaries with your money, with family, with friends, and people around you is going to be so important too. So be bold, and with that, hold up your boundaries and pones límites a las personas que nomás quieren.
I love that point. Thank you, Vero. I love that point. That's a fantastic point. Like, be careful because you can also be naturally generous or you're feeling guilty. The 2 G's, right? Mm-hmm. You're already generous or you feel guilty because si te tocó a ti and you're bountiful and God gave you, like, I sure shit don't have that problem. Like, I know how hard it is to work by what I came by and what I have. So, de mí no se aprovechan. Maybe once, but the second time, I'm like, yours is going to be $72.50. I'm like our friend Cynthia. But I'm like the kind that's like, I'll be super generous with you and then it comes back and it all works out, you know, like it just always works out. I don't worry about that. But there are some people, because you're right, that especially in your family, they think that, you know, oh, you're going to hook it up. You're going to hook it up. So careful of those people that are actually just vultures out to get you. So be bold, have boundaries, believe, and budget. And on that, we want to remind you today is September 14th, I believe. And that means that you have 10 days to get your tickets to our event on September 24th. 10 freaking days. You do not want to miss this event. We are so excited. This is a life-changing event. If you want to talk about mindset and mentality, you need to be in an event like this. It's going to change your life just to have this energy in your world, these women that'll be there, the topics that we'll cover, the free goodies and giveaways that we have in mind, the testimonials that you'll hear. So come to brunch with us. This is our breakthrough brunch, September 24th, 11 a.m. It's a Saturday. What else are you going to do on a Saturday in September? A beautiful Saturday with us at the She Shed. So join us. All the information is on our website, leveluplatina.com is that website. You can also find it on Instagram or Facebook. Going through the links there. Our handle is at Level Up Latina. On Twitter, we're at Latina_up. We're not as active there, but we will share some information on our event on our Twitter soon. So please reshare it, retweet it. We would love to get the word out. Bring your besties, bring your comadres, bring your mama, bring someone that you know needs to change their mentality around money and life and leveling up. So if there's any questions that you have for us or any comments on this, you can either hit us up on Instagram or Facebook or send us an email. Our email is admin@leveluplatina.com. And other than that, money flows freely and effortlessly into our lives, and we need to believe it. And my beautiful co-hosts here, they know that. Our co-founders here know that we are balling, but not balling on a budget anymore, which is exciting.
Not no more.
That's right.
Not no more. We have arrived, and we continue growing. So,
Mengache con chu mengache dinero, como dicen.
so to abundance and an abundance mentality, and to a healthy, wealthy life. Aquí las dejamos. This
I
has
still
been
crave
fun.
a couple noodles here and there, though.
Yeah, ramen for sure. We keep it on stock. We keep it on stock. Mom, please don't come at us with the health stuff. All right, love you, girls.